elected are actually being brought back to June, as we're in a month behind on some of the revenue sources. The one thing I do want to mention, since we're talking about the budget, I made a finance aware that the chief has gotten the green light on the fact that there's a vehicle ready. So we'll be informing council at the next meeting on the vehicle purchase for the truck that's part of his budget. So that'll be coming up. And on the next meeting as well, I will have an updated on proffers. Just to show, we're beginning to collect proffers on the Pulte project at Crossroads. So you want make you guys all aware of what the monies we have coming in. Aside from that, I don't know if there's any specific questions on this budget.
Any questions? I don't think there are any questions at this time.
Okay.
Okay, next item up for discussion, credit card policy updates.
Again, this policy, it's more of a revision of an existing policy. As you guys are aware, this year we have now gotten a full-time maintenance person. We also have a full-time deputy clerk, and we have the events coordinator. The reason why we're asking for this revision on the existing policy is to increase the credit limits from 5,000 to 10,000. Reason being is with the maintenance, the use of the car is more necessary for items to be addressed. We're also asking for the chiefs, the police side, to also be increased to 10,000 as well, because they themselves have convention and trainings that they have to do. Usually the credit cards are the only form of payment to get them to attend these seminars and stuff. When Michael, our auditor, was here, I made sure he was cool with him. We're doing this now. He is happy with the process that we do for our checks and balances. So he was totally fine with it, and found that it was proper to get the policy, revised.
I do have a quick question.
Yes.
We've got something in place for preliminary authorization before the card is used, right?
Yes.
Like a verification.
So how it works, Vice Mayor, is that if anyone needs to do a purchase, they usually go through the manager or the chief. On his side, it'll be the chief, obviously, the police side. When it comes to this town hall side, it's discussed with our town manager, Emily Karazi. There's a form they fill out. She approves it, or we have a discussion over it. But there is a process before they just purchase the items.
Okay, David.
Is this then the second revision or first revision from the original, or has there been prior versions of this?
No, this is the only revision that's been on file.
The only reason why I thought we were at 10,000 years ago. So no? It was all 5,000?
It was always 5,000, yeah, the policy. Yep.
Understood.
Yeah, what's been changed? The bolded, the underline?
The only thing that has been changed, Mayor, is the $10,000 per card. And we specifically also made it easy to read that this is going for the police department's own card, and the town hall has their own card.
To clarify one item, how it was originally written was that the credit card will be issued to the town of Haymarket and held for safekeeping by the treasurer. Based on how we're operating and working on our own efficiencies, it's best for chief to keep the police card on his side so that he and the officers are not constantly having to come over to Roberto's office and get it out of the locked drawer. So this is one of the modifications. The other being the limit.
Okay, any comments by anybody?
The only other question I would have is just so you're incurring debt, and I think this came up when we started using credit cards, how you're incurring debt, but how do we put in there as far as which line item that you're incurring the debt at the time? I mean,
So the form that they do to predetermine that has to be filled out for the manager, Chief is really good at it. He actually puts what line item he wants it in his budget.
oh, so there's a form.
There is a form, official
Okay.
form, yes, we have in-house.
Okay.
Yep,
And that way you code it, that way you know that, okay, I'm spending off of this line item.
correct,
Okay.
correct.
And
Yeah,
just to make everybody feel a little bit more comfortable, that is bullet number 4 under section 1. Receipt shall detail goods and services purchased, the cost of goods and services purchased, the date of the purchase, the official business for which goods or services were purchased, and what budget line item this purchase will affect. And then our form reflects that.
probably been nice if you had the copy of the form, that way you would be able to see that, but that's fine, thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay. I guess we'll go through the regular discussion and vote on this at the town hall meeting next week. We'll move on then. Planning Commission vacancy.
Yes, so currently there is a vacancy on the Planning Commission. We do have an applicant who is interested. This is one of the applicants that was interviewed by the town council, I guess now back in July. So, Kim, did you sent everything to them?
I have it as a placeholder from their discussion at the July meeting.
Okay, so the August meeting was canceled. It was a discussion at the July work session, and the gentleman's name is Walt Young. So we can discuss this on Tuesday evening unless anybody has any questions. He is able to serve and ready to serve. Okay?
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of past interviewing and everything, so we'll just move forward then and enact on it next week. Planning Commission expansion.
Yes, so this was an item, Alexander, we kind of discussed it prior to, or in our July work session, and I don't believe you're able to make that. So we wanted to bring it back up for a discussion. If there was an interest by the council and the planning commission to open up a position on the commission for a intern style seat where this person did not have a vote, but they served on the board and they were able to participate in dialogue, answer questions, and be part so that they could, in a way, be mentored and then later have the opportunity to step into one of the available seats. I think Mayor, did you want to add anything to that? I know you had some thoughts on this proposal.
Yeah, it's mainly to try and keep engagement. We had such good application this time. This is an opportunity to keep engagement, get somebody more familiar with it so that they can roll in if a seat does open up. Of course, it is a non-authoritative seat, so they can't vote. And it doesn't have to be filled. It's just if we had some type of wording in the bylaws or something where we can fill that seat if possible, and it would be something that would be agreed upon by the Planning Commission as opposed to somebody we would have to appoint. But of course, you can utilize the staff and recruitment or whatever. But it's kind of complex. Did Olan give you any details on appropriateness?
He said it would be permitted.
Any comments from board?
I didn't hear, you said, he said that it would be permitted? or-
Yes,
Okay.
it would. So if it's something of interest that the council would like to explore further or ask the planning commission their thoughts, originally when we had this discussion in the July work session, we were hoping that we could discuss it with our liaison and that he could take it to the planning commission and see if it was something of interest. Is that the route that council would like to take? Is it still something that we're interested in? Do we need to learn more?
Yeah, I think we need to learn more.
Okay.
I don't know if it should cause any hesitation on my part, but this is going to be someone who's going to be fully engaged in terms of discussion, conversation, and points of views and so forth. But at the end of the day, he or she is not going to be able to vote, right? But will have an ability to, try to convince other commissioners on certain things, right? Try to change their point of views, or what have you, on issues, right? But he or she's not going to have a vote. So I don't know how I feel about that. It's something I think I'm going to need to take a little bit of time to think about it.
Yep. And yeah, I only wanted to bring that up just to see what people's, the temperature of what people felt about it. Because, I mean, this is their contribution is kind of the same as if they contributed regularly at the Citizens' Time, right? So you do have a little bit of influence in there, but at least it's a more engagement of the community, one more person within the community. But yeah, like I said, it just gives an opportunity for things. Anybody?
I was just going to add, if this is something that the planning commission would like to flesh out amongst your committee, I think that would be a better suited avenue. And then maybe you as the liaison can present it to us with what the planning commission is comfortable with or what questions they have or a different route that they would prefer. Because ultimately you guys are the one that would have to deal with this choice and navigate that new dynamic. So I think that it's worth sharing because I did love how many people wanted to participate. I don't want to discourage involvement, right? But at the end of the day, I'm not the one on planning commission with you and having to navigate that arena. So,
Yes, I agree with you. When I say let me think about it, I'm talking about me personally. I'm not representing the other commissioners, right? Definitely, if the other commissioners are open to it, I'm good with that. But personally, right? Yeah, definitely.
And also, my thoughts are that this should be like the council's vision. If they see it at 5 or 7 or whatever the number is, that if they're actually here on the dais, and I assume they're probably going to get paid to be up here, then they should have a vote. I mean, internship is sort of, once you get, you show a desire to be on a committee, you're learning as being a committee member. So, I mean, kind of a neat idea, but like I said, if they're on the dais, they're performing a duty, they're getting paid, possibly, I'm not sure. Then I'd say that if it's desire of the council to go from 5 to 7, then that's what we should be discussing, whether or not having those. And there again, you don't want to discourage people that have now taken the opportunity to volunteer their time to come up and participate. But that's my thoughts.
Regarding expanding the number of commissioners on the planning commission, I think speaking to Kim, we've run into issues in the past in terms of having a quorum. Maybe Emily, you can speak to that. Once I heard that, initially, of course, I was for expanding the commission. But if that is going to be a challenge,
Yeah, we've seen challenges with it. Emily can give you any type of history on it.
Certainly. So 6 years ago when I started here, we had a planning commission of 7. That was working pretty well through the years, but then as we kind of got into the 2019 timeframe, we did have some of those commissioners step down or their terms were over and they didn't wish to continue. So there were times where we would have a struggle of finding interested interested residents to serve on the commission. So we would work hard, the clerk and I would, along with all of town council, to do what you guys are helping us with every time this happens. And that's, reach out to our community, find interested participants, put it in our newsletters, put it on the website. Here and there, we get people who are interested, but unfortunately don't live within our community, so we have to turn them away. When you have a board of 7, we would always need to ensure that we had a quorum of at least 4 to have the meeting start and be able to take action at the meeting. Occasionally, this was an issue. We would have an issue with getting 4 members to show up, even though, they signed up for that standing monthly meeting. It's been better now that we have a 5-member board because, we're relying on the 3 people, but still, we still have months where it is difficult if it's back to school and we have people who are, busy with their children. Vacations in the summer are very hard, but we make it work. So my biggest concern from a staff point of view is certainly the more voices, the more participation is best. It's, the most productive for our community. It's a way that we are able to get more representation for, all of our different parts of our community. However, finding those interested individuals and keeping them engaged, keeping them interested, having them continue to serve with us, or if not serve, help us find replacements, that's been hard. Kim?
Also, you have to remember that it took us from February to almost July to find 4 applications.
So an intern position could minimize that time frame.
Well, yes, but it was difficult finding those applications to start with.
Right.
Yep, and one of my biggest problems with outreach was most of the people were intimidated, not familiar with how it worked, didn't want to take the responsibility of making a decision that could affect the town. Internship may help, draw more people saying, hey, you can experience the position without being responsible for it. But those were some of my thoughts. It's an idea that I thought I'd bring up to council.
So, Emily, if possible, for the next planning commission meeting, let's have that discussion with the other commissioners in terms of opening up an internship position.
Yes, I will add that.
Okay, thank you.
So
And it may roll to you, so.
I was just going to say, I will coordinate with you. I will be out of the office that week, but between myself, Kim, Thomas, we'll coordinate with you, make sure everything you need is covered for the discussion.
roll to me.
Yep, and we had some people, or a head count that we might have been able to start this to be like a pilot program, but if it was successful there, I'd probably want to try to roll it with the ARB liaison too, but.
I'm thinking positively, we're about to add 325 people to the town over here. We've hopefully seen probably about 100 or so people in the Van Meter project. I'm hoping that out of that we'll get some new interest in these positions. I would be inclined to do it on a temporary program, but I guess staff, I would look to you guys to get your recommendation on. Do you see the need? Is it difficult to facilitate? Is it worth the cost benefit? I'd be interested in your guys' opinion as well. So.
You can run some numbers of what the cost would be, how it would affect this year's budget if we were to go through with it this year. One of the things just to put out there for thought is in years past, we also discussed having a professional sit on one of the boards that was not necessarily a resident, but an architect on the ARB or, a civil engineer or land use planner on the Planning Commission. We are actually very fortunate. Right now, we have residents who hold professional positions in that field on our Planning Commission. And we have professionals on our ARB as well who have the interest or at least very well versed in architecture. So, but we did also discuss having a professional who was not a resident.
I'm sorry, when I said cost benefit, not so much what we would pay them, just for the amount of time and effort needed to make this position viable. Does staff see a need for it, at least at this time? But maybe that's next week when we come back. Do we have to vote on this next week? Are we looking for a guidance tonight, or what we're,
If you-
or
Just
waiting for
something
you to
a
go back to the
directive,
PC?
Just
Okay.
something for a directive for the staff to,
I would say would come
Move
back
forward.
in the September work session because that gives us time to
Go to the
talk with the
PC?
Planning
Okay.
Commission.
Great, thank you.
okay. We'll move on. We got the Town Park Building.
Yes, so tonight we have our engineer Katie with us. It's been a while. So Katie's here to
Could
talk.
Could I interrupt you?
Yes.
I know Joe had a conflict, and he's trying to get here. If there's no objection on the dais, I'd like to bump that to the last agenda item, just to give Joe some time, and to give Katie some more money, right? She gets to sit here longer and charge us. Okay, we'll go to the feedback from the High Point
Certainly.
meeting.
So yesterday evening, of course, we moved our meeting to tonight so that myself, chief, and mayor at a minimum could attend the High Point at Haymarket Town Hall meeting that was hosted by Supervisors Lawson and Supervisor Weir. So last night, myself, mayor, chief, Councilwoman Ramirez, and Councilman Passanello and Councilman Bayene attended, and Vice Mayor also was there. We did notice it to the public, and nobody was talking in groups of 3, let alone nobody was talking in groups of 2. Just put that out there for the public. So we attended the meeting. It was intended for it to accomplish providing information to the Brinsville District as well as the Gainesville District residents on what this High Point project is all about. So we've discussed it. High Point is a affordable housing development that is proposed for just south of the railroad tracks. 4 acres of it is located in the Town Conservation District, and another 8 acres of it is located in the county, which is currently zoned for office mid-rise use. The applicant is seeking a rezoning in both jurisdictions. In the county jurisdiction, they're seeking to go to residential and do what they consider R16 housing, so 16 units per acre, I believe is how they have it stated. And in the town, they're requesting to go to an R2 zoning from conservation. So the town portion, 4 acres, is 96 units proposed. The county portion is 144 units proposed. The entry-exit point is off of Route 15, and then we also went through some of the deficiencies that the application had. Specifically, the supervisors noted deficiencies that their staff had come up with. So this is the county planning office, the county parks office, fire and rescue, all of those different divisions there that they work with. They did ask the town to provide, some input or at least update them on our portion of the project. So we kept it very brief. We let them know that we've received an application. We are in the review process of the application and hope to turn around comments to the applicant here shortly. We also let them know some of our upfront concerns that we had, entry and access on Route 15, density issues. I also asked, since Chief was at the meeting, I asked for him to say a few words on his concerns that he had for the development from a public safety standpoint. So he spoke as well. There were no questions that were directed directly to the town officials. There were a lot of questions directed to the supervisors, and a lot of the questions were defining what is the affordable housing element. Is it low income? Is it workforce housing? Or is it affordable housing? They stated that the housing is geared towards the 40 to 80% average median income, with the average of it being 60%. They talked through some of the entry and exit point issues. They have supplied a second submission to the county as of last week. The town has not received a second submission yet. I do know in the county submission, they removed everything that referenced the town portion of the project, and the county has asked them to leave it out so that they can look at it just standalone on the county portion. So they have that. I was also told that the new application had a different intersection for going in and out, that you could now make a left-hand turn out of the development. So an original concern that Chief and I had was if it's a right out only, then you're forced to go right, go over the railroad tracks, and then come up to Route 15 and make a U-turn if you need to go back the other direction, or you come through town and get back down to Somerset Crossing. So that was one of the concerns we had, was the increase of traffic maneuvers on the Route 15 intersection. So again, the community came out. There were probably a good 100, 150 people that were there. They rose a lot of different questions. There were elements of it that got political, and there were a couple arguments that broke out. So other than that, I'm happy to answer questions or to share more. And Mary, or anybody who was there, if you guys would like to share any of your points of view from the meeting and takeaways.
Sure. I did also want to chime in as far as the acreage. So right now there, from my understanding, please correct me if I'm wrong, there's 4 acres in town, and then you said 8 for this step. What was noted to me in this meeting that the supervisors put up is that this is stage 1 of 3. So the entire land portion from basically the railroad track to Somerset is purchased by this developer, and they intend to start here, grow and grow all the way through to Somerset. So I feel like that's also very important as far as the impact it would have on our town, on our resources, but also the community at large and the schools in which our constituents' children go to. So I feel like this is a very important conversation, and I would encourage all of my colleagues to participate in any kind of informational meetings that might come up in the future, or see if we want to advocate for our constituents on behalf of, as a town. I would encourage us to do that as well. That's all.
I really have nothing to add. Those that were there heard my comments, and of course, the town manager and I have went over several of the aspects dealing with traffic, especially pedestrian traffic, that we feel that this project will generate. And then subsequently, as Councilwoman Ramirez said, is the pull on our resources here as far as law enforcement goes, and calls for service, and ratifying our mutual aid agreement with Prince William. So those are our concerns, and in a Zoom meeting, we did give those concerns to the builder and their project manager, or I'm not sure what Patrick's official title is, and they said that they would come back with mitigation aspects of that, but we have yet to see what their feelings is on that. That would really be all that I had to have. But if I had to add, but if there was any questions, I'd be glad to answer any.
Sorry, I missed if you stated this. So right now they're not pursuing the in-town portion at this moment, or?
Thank you for asking that. So a week ago, I was told that they would not be pursuing the town portion of this project. I did reach out to Sherman Patrick, and he has not stated that.
Okay.
He everything he said indicates they're still moving forward with the town portion of it, but that the county has asked them to remove all reference and anything showing that there would be a portion in the town. So one of the struggles that I have with that, as you know, wearing my planner hat, is how can we effectively plan a community for over 200 units when we, on the town side, there's no direct access to it. You have to go through the county to get in and out. And so, I mean, they're looking at this, they're only looking at 2/3 of it. They're leaving out the back third. I mean, it's 96 units. It's more half and half.
Did they give an estimated hearing time when it'll be going to the planning commission?
So it was stated last night by Tom Gordy, who's the Brinsville area planning commissioner, that they're trying to get it on the October planning commission agenda.
Okay, before the end of the,
So they're certainly expediting it.
is there another opportunity for you as staff to comment on it again?
I am hopeful that we'll get the second submission here soon. Their case planner, who's assigned to it, is swamped with other projects right now, so he hasn't even had a chance to necessarily look at what was submitted last week.
Okay. And I guess we've already previously stated there's currently not a zoning entitlement, there's not policy support, any of what they're trying to propose in town is not currently.
Correct, and it was
Permitted,
also
okay.
noted last night that there is no affordable housing ordinance in the county to support this either.
Okay, thank you.
I saw your hand up, David. You had-
Just, was there any public comment that was in favor of this project? Sounded like it was all not in favor.
I would say that there were not that many citizens who actually were able to speak in favor or not. They were more asking questions. I would say there were a couple individuals who showed up and spoke in favor by asking the questions that they did of, you know, what kind of affordable housing is this? You know, people who live in this community and work elsewhere, maybe they could work in this community and live here and afford it. So there were some that spoke generally in favor.
Understood. Thanks.
Tracy?
Outside of the 40 to 80% average income target, there wasn't any additional definition of affordable or workforce?
No, there was not. I do believe the way it was stated that in this most recent submission to the county, that they went through the process to specifically define in their narration the type of housing, and that hopefully when we get that application, it's in there and it's clearly stated, because it did, to my knowledge, it did change from what was originally submitted back in March to the county to what was submitted last week.
Thank you.
I had the impression that the affordable housing piece was due to the fact that they had applied for federal loans or something like that, and they were matching the verbiage from that and the requirements to meet that in their submission. That was my
I
understanding.
think that's a fair assessment.
And that's probably where your definition would be. So I don't know if you want to reach out to the county and say, you know, what grant are they grabbing? What grant are you funneling through to them? Because that, you know, let's get that paperwork, and that should have the definition of whether it's workforce, low income, or whatever. You got a question?
And these are all great questions that we can ask the applicant ourselves to submit to us, because we are reviewing the 4-acre portion of it. So any of these questions, anything you come up with, you know, in the meantime, please send me an email so that we can get as much information from them as possible.
I thought I heard something, good evening, a range of AMI of 40 to 80%, was that right?
That is correct.
So how does that tie into the definition of workforce affordable housing? I mean, I guess that's an economic basis, right? So we have some kind of a understanding what they're talking about. No?
Yes. Yes, I will clarify with them exactly what they applied for. I'm sure there's specific requirements of that grant funding. I do know they stated that these were, as they phrased it last night, apartments for rent, and then they went through the 40 to 80% AMI, 60% being the average.
Right, to
So.
qualify.
Yeah. So yeah, with this, we know they're going to get some type of credit for it. But maybe a question you want to ask also to target, to determine whether it is workforce, low income, is the government going to subsidize this? Rental fees, right? Subsidize the rental fees as opposed to give them credits. That, because, the moment you start talking about subsidize, that goes into Section 8 of the laws, so.
And I will also ask if it is the entire development is this type of affordable housing, or if a certain number of units are under this type of housing and the rest might not be. Because I know that there is cases where we have developments that a portion of them is affordable housing under certain definitions.
I know as a town, we will be discussing this later, so I just wanted to put this in everybody's ear. From my understanding of the meeting last night is that the applicant had not submitted mitigation efforts or intentions to provide mitigation efforts or proffers or anything to that effect for the obstacles that were noted by county staff. And I think that that's something really important that we need to pay attention to, especially mitigation, because we can sit here and say, I'm worried about X, Y, and Z. If they're, they need to come to the table ready to how they're going to address that. So if staff, I know you're going to be reviewing that first application for us. If you guys could make note if there's any mitigation language, I would like to know about that, please. Yes.
Anybody else have any questions?
Can I make a statement?
What's that?
Can I make a statement?
Make a statement.
Okay. So I think I said this last time, is that the perception that the town is against affordable housing, I think, is a misnomer, and that's why I brought up the policies earlier. Our long-range plan does not contemplate any sort of residential density at this scale. And so I would encourage folks that are critical of the town's position to review our land use documents, review our zoning ordinances. It's not to say that we can't change them, but these are sensitive environmental areas, there's accessibility issues, there's service provisions. So I really think we're looking at it from a perspective of long-term support for these types of projects, but we're not even in a position to do that. There's a number of steps that would have to happen for us to even reconsider planning that area of town for a density of this scale, plus all the services that would come along with it. So I just want to put that out there. If I did hear that there was some feedback that we were not being supportive or that somehow being discriminatory against affordable housing, just needs to be right location and have the accessibility of the right services. Thanks.
I'm sorry, where did you hear that?
That was some of the feedback at the meeting last night when I spoke with folks that attended. That was the feedback yesterday. Was that not from those that attended?
Specifically the town?
No, they're just in
Specifically
general.
the town was?
Yeah. Was it specifically the town, or was it in general?
No,
last
that's
night?
what I'm asking, if the feedback was specifically that the town was being discriminated towards them.
Okay. I want to say last time we discussed this, there was some reference to that.
I think in general, it's those that opposed the development where I think we're kind of not directly but indirectly being labeled as anti-affordable housing. And I think if we also, at our level, if it comes before us, I'm sure we're going to be labeled as such if we have any objections to, what's being proposed.
The reason I ask is because, as staff, we've made every strive to stay neutral in this as we're reviewing it, as we're, required to do. So I felt last night that our comments or our statements were as neutral as possible while still protecting our land use requirements and our ordinance. So that's just why I was asking for some clarification there, Marchant.
I'd like to make another statement, though, to follow on to what Marchant said. I just want to make people aware that I think Emily did a great job last night in presenting the town's position. It was just the facts, ma'am. And I think that's important. And I think, Chief, thank you as well. You did a great job presenting your thoughts and impacts. And for me,
Mine might have been a little bit more emotional than hers.
well, okay, I'm not really sure about that, but for me, I'll just share my initial thoughts, and I'm sorry I'm late walking in on this, but a lot of it has to do with process. And that seemed to get lost in the sauce in the discussion. And the fact that the application doesn't appear to be ready for review, and that it needs a lot of work, and even the county staff themselves have pushed back on it. I think that's an important aspect of it that seems to have gotten lost in that discussion. I don't think anybody at that meeting said that they weren't in favor of affordable housing or workforce housing or something that's more affordable. I think that everybody had a consensus at that meeting that housing is very expensive. And that's a challenge. Some of the concerns I think that were raised about this proposed project was the location, the isolation, the disconnectedness of the project to certain requirements for affordable and workforce housing. That's at least what I came away with. So I think they still have a lot of work. They would have a lot of work for us, I would think, as well. But relative to the county, I mean, I guess the only thing we can do, we can't really control that. We can only control our own destiny in the town. But we at least need to continue to be engaged and share our thoughts on the matter and continue to share our thoughts. And, rightly or wrongly, I mean, we should let people know what we're thinking. And I think we did a good job last night. So thank you, Chief and Emily.
Okay. Any more questions before we move on?
Nope.
Okay, let's move on to the town park building.
Yes, so as I started, Katie is here tonight to talk to us about some of the different steps for either project that we would want to accomplish there, right down to what it would take to do some civil engineering, what we need to think about in terms of DEQ permitting, other permitting, grading. So we're going to go through some of those, and then Roberto and I are going to talk on some of the numbers that we were able to draw on from the previous plan that was adopted and the numbers in that table. So we'll first let Katie speak. Feel free to ask questions. That's what she's here for tonight, so that hopefully we can keep this moving forward.
Good evening, Council. So we've been discussing different options, whether those are going to be to renovate the existing building on the park property or to tear it down and replace it with something like a picnic pavilion. So I just wanted to give you guys a general idea of some of the steps that would be included in each of those processes. Being a civil engineer, not an architect, I can't speak to the details of what would be required for a full interior renovation. But based on changing the use, I would anticipate, and I noticed that the previous master plan anticipated some utility upgrades that would likely have to go to the sewer and water mains in Washington Street. Based on the report that was done last fall in November, looking at the structure itself, there's some foundation repairs that need to happen. And so some of those are going to be below grade, so there's going to be some land disturbance that is required for that as well. And assuming all of these improvements for an interior renovation are going to happen all at the same time, you're going to want to provide an accessible route from the public right-of-way up to the building as well. So I think that with all of those, you're probably going to be pretty close to the threshold of disturbing 2,500 square feet. Which then triggers stormwater management, BMP, all the fun civil engineering stuff, and a full site plan that would go along with it, in addition to the interior renovations. And then from a teardown perspective and replacing it with a pavilion-type facility, whether that's a prefabricated type facility or a more custom facility that reflects the character of the structures that are on the property, like was discussed in the master plan. Again, you're most likely going to be disturbing more than 2,500 square feet between the demolition of the footings, the foundations, capping utilities at the main in Washington Street, and if we're going to have water fountains or bathrooms in a different form, we still have those utility upgrades. So that would be more of a, probably just looking at kind of a civil and structural effort between the pavilion and a site plan to do the site improvements and the stormwater management and BMPs, whereas the renovation would be more of a full design team, architect, MEP, structural, civil, et cetera. So that's kind of just a quick overview of what would be involved. I'm happy to take any specific questions or more detailed questions.
Just a comment, Mr. Mayor. So if I heard you right, Katie, the build-out would require architectural design engineering as well. But the pavilion, I guess because it's a prefabricated, it already has a lot of the design elements already in the structure itself. Is that correct?
Based on what I read from what Emily provided me, it sounded like everything is pretty much included, aside from maybe doing an analysis of the slab and whether reinforcement is required in the slab that will be under the structure. But yes, if you went the prefab route, you could probably avoid an architect.
Right. Because of the design's already, the engineering's already part of that, and part of the payback is the price of paying for the pavilion itself. For the engineering, at least. Right, okay. All right, thank you.
A couple of questions. So just clarification. So the master plan had retained the existing structure and a pavilion. So those are two elements. What we're looking at is one or the other to replace the house. So the prefab one, I was going to ask that too, because if it has elements that match sort of the character of the area, that will take it to some additional expense, I imagine. Okay.
Yeah, if you wanted it to have characteristics that were reflective of
Retain
the structures
retain
were there,
the
I would
fireplace.
recommend involving an architect that could come up with some sort of a custom solution versus a right off the shelf prefab structure.
Sounds like probably more of a custom solution. Now, we did talk about bathrooms. I noticed in the report we just got did not mention necessarily bathrooms, but if we do include bathrooms, I'm sure there'll be some mechanical engineering, all the same things that need to be done. So it's civil, all that sort. Would civil need to be done for that as well?
Yeah, so based on my reading of the master plan, it sounded like they were discussing using this structure for bathrooms and office spaces and meeting space, and they had included some utility upgrades in that. I didn't see the details on what exactly they had assumed, but it would require some upgrades.
Okay. With the bathrooms for the pavilion, would those be within the structure? Was that what we were thinking versus sort of a separate building away from the structure?
With the prefab solution, it would be a separate structure for the bathrooms.
Okay, so we'd have to go through different designs, different architectural designs. So they may do a prefab pavilion, but we would have to do a separate exercise to do public restrooms up there. And those would also require utilities as well. Okay. So the renovation, we're thinking, that's what actually, but BMP, we couldn't just get away with an E&S plan unless we were determined to be less than 2,500 square feet. Okay.
Yeah, unless you really piecemealed the project and maybe did the foundation repairs separately, and then did things piecemeal. But I think in the end, you're not going to end up with something as seamless and reflective of what you want the space to be, doing it that way.
Okay. The timing between the two, would they have about the same timetable, or do you think one could possibly move faster than the other, just from an engineering perspective? Construction?
From a construction standpoint, it's a little difficult to answer given the repairs that need to happen to the foundation and how contractors would be able to get in to do those in the interior if you were going to renovate. And again, being an engineer, not knowing what the architect's scope would need to be, I can't necessarily speak to that. I think a demo and putting up a pavilion with a concrete floor would generally be pretty quick, but I can't speak to the interior renovations.
But then the bathrooms too, the bathrooms for the separate pavilion. Okay, thank you for answering that. So by your estimate, both require site plans. Did you talk about parking at all? Are we addressing parking as part of either plan for the future, or just sort of addressing that by a separate?
I think since you're already going to be over the threshold, it's worth looking at. There is the existing gravel lot there now. But to put something in that's more formalized and maybe serves both sides of the site would make sense to do at the same time.
So I didn't have in front of me with the size of the, Emily, I guess it's more for you, the size of the pavilion that would replace the house as an option, is that the same size as the master plan done, or would that be larger than what the master plan? I want to say the master plan like 3,500 square feet.
So when I got the prefab quotes, I got it as close to the number of what was in the master plan.
Okay.
And I do have a handout I will pass out to kind of talk cost from the plan versus now.
Okay. Beyond just the site plan, other requirements, the PC would need a review, I guess both, this would be an administrative site plan, or would it require a planning commission review as well? Do we know?
It would require planning commission review. So if it's between 2,500 square feet and an acre, we'd review it internally as the town on the stormwater and ENS side, and then the planning commission would approve it. If it goes over an acre of disturbance, like if we decide to do a large parking lot or add more to the scope than just the pavilion, then that would require coverage under the state construction general permit.
Okay, but that, obviously, we would try to do parking now, that would significantly increase the cost. Okay. Do we have, Emily, I had read that that parking, we're allowed to do parking within 750 feet of the main structure. Is there an opportunity to, if we wanted to talk to the church about doing parking in the interim, if we didn't want to do all our parking now?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Our ordinance allows off-site parking within 700 feet, what I read. Would there be an opportunity to use other available parking in the area to support the use, at least in the near term? Roberto, you're shaking your head no.
Based on our interactions that we've had with neighboring properties,
Okay.
we have levels of agreements where we utilize their parking during events.
Okay.
However, we have also been told that our park sometimes burdens their parking lots and their activities they have on a day-to-day basis. So I don't think we should rely on others to burden our parking issues.
Thanks. Going back to the requirements, the PC would need to review both plans. The Architecture Review Board would need to review the demolition permit, and there's a criteria they have to meet for that. ARB would also need to review, I guess, the pavilion and any other structures associated with the pavilion too, so, okay.
Okay. You want to
Thanks.
talk cost, or Tracy Lynn, do you have?
I just want a
Yes,
real quick
please.
question in regards to addressing any of the well and septic as far as changing the use of that. Would we be going public? No, that's okay.
Yes, so we would first need to determine whether it's on well and septic or if it's on public water and sewer already. And if it's going to be a public use with a larger restroom, we would want to go the route of doing public water and sewer for that.
Yep. We want to eliminate that yearly audit that we get from the EPA, right,
Yeah.
Emily?
I think we would still want to keep water for irrigation, wouldn't we? I don't think we would
Well
wanna-
water?
Yeah, I don't think we would want to get rid
Well,
of that.
well water we could do. Septic is what is usually need to be
Yeah, yeah.
evaluated. You know, and plus the well, if we just used it for gardening, I don't think we need to even check for potability.
No, just can't make sure no one drinks it.
Yeah. Yeah, put a big sign on it,
Not potable.
not potable.
Okay, so the handout that was passed out to you, this is the master plan summary budget that was in the original master plan from 2015, 2016 timeframe. And this is, again, the summary, so it takes all of the portions of the project and lumps them into fewer categories versus the different phases. It breaks it down a little bit more. So we just started with this summary version. Roberto ran the construction rate of inflation of 19.6%. And so that's what you have in the second column. So when we first looked at this, just to get a rough idea of numbers, if you look at the number 13 item, the pavilion picnic shelter, again, I would have to get the exact specs for what this would be, but it goes from 75,000 to $90,000. If we look at some of the items that Katie has mentioned here tonight that we need to remember, utility upgrade and installation is $251,000 roughly. The remodel to include, I'm sorry, let me back up. Right under the utility upgrade is demolition or harvesting of the police structure. So for the sake of the structures are relatively the same, I use this number to ballpark what the demolition of the current structure would be. And so in today's dollars, estimated roughly $49,000. If we were to upgrade the pantry in place based on this report and what was known at that time, it would be $170,000. I think we need to all agree that this number would be higher based on the foundation report and what could have happened over the last roughly 8 years to the structure since this was done. And then the remodel to include 5-stall men's and women's bathrooms is an additional $56,000. This would be to add it to the existing structure, so that's not a standalone structure. I also wanted to highlight some of the other things we talked about. If we're going to go through and upgrade our parking lot, and we want to do it in terms of what the master plan prepared, I think we should look at items 1 and 2, the parking lot and the roadway, because we need to upgrade our entry point and our roadway into the park to allow for two-directional traffic to come in and out of the facility. So that is, roughly $250,000 if you couple both of those together. So certainly we can go down the list and we can pick and choose numbers that we want to compare or items that we might want to get additional numbers on. But again, this was just our rough estimate. If you flip to the back page, I also wanted to bring to your attention that there were contingencies and soft costs that were added into the plan, and we should also keep those in mind. So the totality of the project was listed with inflation rate that Roberto calculated at $2,376,000.
Okay. The sidewalk that we're building out at the park, would that not contemplate these entrances already?
It certainly does contemplate the entrances. Katie can speak to that more as our engineer, but I'm mainly referencing, you can have 2 entrances, but the one entrance doesn't connect to the parking lot. So right now we just have grass, so you can't get to the second, entry. So we need to consider that roadway that loops us in and gets you over to the parking lot.
Okay.
And Katie can add to
The
that.
entrances being proposed with the streetscape improvements project are essentially like residential size aprons. They're not like full 2-way apron widths.
Gotcha. Playground, we can obviously back out because that's already been built unless we were expecting to do upgrades. Demolition costs would have to be added to the other option that we're discussing. Some of these we've done too, picnic tables. So yeah, I guess if we were to sort of go through and pull out a lot of these, it may lower the overall cost. But in the, 10 years or how many years since we've had it, it's about a $200,000 increase over the previous.
And this is just a rough estimate. I
Gotcha.
just want to put it out there again. We did not speak to, financial planners, professionals in this on inflation rates. This was what Roberta and I were able to work with what we were given.
Oh, no, that's fine.
I don't want anybody to hold us to.
Right.
Well, you quoted that it was going to be 100,000, and now we're looking more.
To be clear, are you finished?
No, I have some other questions. So this is simply for implementation of the community site, and some of these elements, obviously, because the garage is still there, there's other things that we could take out if we wanted to lower that overall. But is it something, are we doing sort of a similar thing, comparing the costs for just doing the pavilion, the bathrooms, and other types of things as well? Is that another analysis we've looked at, or was that, we were just limited to just the?
So what I was trying to show with this analysis is that if we pick and choose and we pick out the pavilion, and then we also need to consider pavilion, utilities, stormwater, roadway, parking lot.
Okay.
And then if we rough estimate, a bathroom here, I can get a quote for a standalone bathroom, how many units that would be. That's something that's a little bit easier to get a quote on. Then yes, I can pull together what these numbers would show, and then I can do your second scenario where we leave out the pavilion, we do the remodel and not the demolition, the upgrade.
The utility upgrade installation, okay, that was earlier. I guess the number's so high on that because that's got to pay the tap fees and other types of things, I imagine.
And we also need to make sure that this considers the overhead power line that comes into the property and how that's handled.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have for now. Thanks.
Joe?
Yeah, so I better understand it. First time seeing the numbers. This is based on the report from 2015, which
Yes.
is really based on conceptuals. There's really no engineering behind this.
Correct. And Katie already shared that stormwater will definitely go up from the number you see on this page.
Which number is
So for stormwater management, they were assuming a pond. I think we'll probably have to, depending on what the direction is, it might be underground, so the cost will potentially double.
All right, in any case, right, in any case, it has to be done, whether there's a building or whether there's a pavilion. All right, I do have a question about the process going forward. So Marchant mentioned the PC site plan, right? We would have to do a site plan regardless of what option. And then ARB review if in fact we go forward with a demolition. Is that correct? Right, for C of A. So if the ARB decides to not grant a demolition, who would be the aggrieved party in that case that could take it to the council for appeal?
I will get back to you on the exact aggrieved party. I'll get back to you on that language.
Okay, I think that would be helpful. All right, and so just to finally clarify, a lot of these costs are shared by either decision that we make going forward. All right, okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Any other follow-up questions? I'll wait for other.
Anybody else?
What happens, what would need to be done? The house has not been condemned, correct? It's not been condemned or deemed structurally unsafe. It's, okay. So, I'm sorry, what would we need to do to if we were to go this other route? Do we need to do anything in the house in the interim?
Yes, so I think that is a great point to bring up with the council. As staff, I need direction on what we're going to do with this house sooner rather than later. And the reason I state that, we're coming up on the fall and winter. I have asked that no staff or anybody enters into the house to protect themselves so that we don't continue to, have issues, liabilities. But we also need to be taking care of the house if we plan to keep it so it does not continue to deteriorate. We have issues on the outside. We have rodents that get into it. We are trying our best to manage it in a low-cost option so that we are taking care of the problem, but we're not sinking money into it if we are going to demo it. So we are at a point where we need direction on what level of maintenance we want to continue with at this house.
I had another one come up.
So yes, we have. We learned the hard way a couple years ago. I'll be fully transparent. We learned the hard way a couple years ago. We had some pipe issues at the house, and so since then we have done all we can to winterize it, make sure that the heat stays on at an appropriate level, our pipes don't freeze. So we do go through those steps. I will do that again this winter when the time comes if the house is still standing and we're still making decisions. We will not let anything happen with frozen pipes again. That was a lesson learned very well.
Yes?
think that's it.
So the two options to replace the house or upgrade it, the two estimates, as I recall the plan, the estimates done at the time to the footprint of the existing structure would have been brought back, so we would have gotten rid of the addition in the back. But the cost to build that facility new, at the time, it was a higher cost. I think it was over 200,000 versus the 140 that's in this, and the reuse of the existing one. Was there any, did you guys happen to, I don't think that was part of your direction, but did you happen to look at the two costs between the two structures? Okay. Sort of off topic a little bit. So right now, we own a number of assets at the town center property that have value. And if we were ever positioned in a position to subdivide and sell off these properties, right now, are we at max capacity for staff? In other words?
For staff
yeah.
in this building?
Correct.
I would say yes.
Okay. So there is opportunities that if we had kept or retained some of these other structures that we would be able to use for office space?
I think we have a lot of different options to look
Okay.
at. We also had an interior plan done for this structure. That's something that can be picked back up. We had different office layouts that would have allowed for additional seats within this office. As it stands today, all of the offices are full, but we also have available space upstairs and in the Copper Cricket building. So, we could divide and have off-site annexed offices as it's needed. Today, don't quote me on this for in a year from now, but for today, I don't necessarily see our staff needing to grow much larger than it is right now. Maybe some positions go to full-time, but right now I don't see us adding another 3 staffers that would need desks and offices.
Police, if we were to add additional police, was there sufficient capacity for the structurally?
Sorry.
And you don't have to go into other detail other than just, you guys see where I'm going with it, is that if we're going to continue to grow to support, we're going to quickly outgrow the space that we have right now.
It would depend on the amount of officers. We could absorb one,
Okay.
but any more than that, no. It would be just a little cramped. We already share a cubicle space with the full-timers, with the part-timers as well. Of course, obviously, the part-timers are not here every day. So it's adequate for that. But if we started adding full-time staff, then it's going to become much, much tighter back there.
So thank you for indulging my questions over that. So I guess if we were to, again, do the others, we would have the ability. I think the master plan did move staff upstairs, but it would require some additional work to be done interior of the building to be able to accommodate that. Okay, thanks.
Any other comments? Thank you for the information.
May I ask what the next step is that council would like to see from staff?
Let me put it another way. Do we have enough information to make a decision and bifurcate this issue and determine whether we go with the building or go with a pavilion? Council. Because right now, I'm ready to make a motion next week to move forward, to direct the staff for a demo. So that's my question.
I think that's fine. Last time I was asked, I had mentioned our ordinances, policies, plans, guidelines, precedent that all speak to how we reuse buildings, and one of the questions was, what were those specifically? So I did go, and I would offer to your consideration, Emily, I'm starting a chance to go through this today, and I expect you to audit me, but I have 6 pages of zoning ordinance and comp plan citations that speak to adaptive reuse of historic structures, and specifically the Sears houses. So I'll pass those out for people to take a look at it. If the vote is next week, I would encourage folks to walk through town, take an audit of the streetscape, contemplate what our future is and what it means to how we reuse and treat the property.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think for now, Emily, you can sit idle until next week when a decision is made.
Okay. So we will put it back on the agenda for next week. And based on this discussion, I will not prepare a draft motion. I will leave that to the town council unless you guys would like several different draft motions prepared.
Yep.
There's
Council, please do your homework on this. Any questions, you can directly ask.
no more, the numbers we talked about, maybe narrowing down some of the numbers to more accurately reflect the two comparisons. Is there any interest in doing that? In other words, if you were to take out all these elements of this estimate just for the the things that are applicable to the two options we're being asked to consider. Would that be helpful to the council?
So could you do that? Recommend what you would piecemeal, what you would pick if you wanted to go with a pavilion or if you wanted to rebuild the house? Or do you?
Yes, but the reason I smirk is we need to include emergency access. There are things that we cannot just delete out because we don't want to do it. So I can do that, but I think when it comes down to it, it's going to look a little bit more like getting a haircut, not really
That's fine.
losing
That's why I'm
weight,
asking
right?
the council if it'd be, okay?
Okay.
And right now, there's no, so I think we had done a cost estimate. When Lewis did the estimate, what was the estimate again? Do we remember what that was?
200 and something.
It's like $200,000 or something like that?
I'll have to get with Roberto. I was not here for that.
Okay, when we passed out, we passed out a memo at that time, didn't we?
Yeah, Lewis's number was a lot less than what you see in.
So the contractor Lewis, his number was what he can see. He made it very clear that once you start renovating, once you start breaking the walls, that you will need an architect for the inside. In order to make that building to the use that Councilman Marchand had talked about, he said the rehab code would not be acceptable for it. You have to bring it up to commercial, so you will be spending a lot more money. It's not an easy fix. In his opinion, since we're talking about it, the pavilion was the way to go for him. He said it was the cheapest and the most efficient, because he also stated that once we have that building up, the maintenance, which we haven't discussed yet, okay? There's a lot of maintenance that will have to happen there. Right now, we have our maintenance coordinator going there, checking in as part of his job. But once that building, if it goes up and running, we will probably have to talk about staffing. That's another issue that has to come up. But right now, the building, is a discussion on it. And just so council's aware, in this master plan too, Councilman Marchand Schneider, this plan was a 10-year plan. In 2015, it calls it the phasing. It's a 10-year phase. I know if you're concerned about the timing, just be aware that big master plan, it was a 10-year program. It wasn't a quick fix either.
Exactly. And it was front-loaded with the reuse of the house, I believe. So with those costs, so the costs that you mentioned, that's with any renovation, any adaptive reuse of a historic structure. It's not unique to us, and it's not untenable. It's done quite frequently. We've done it within the town already, so we've done it ourselves already. So I appreciate the heads up about that, but that is not unique to us. The maintenance, part of that is the fact that we haven't maintained the building over the last 10 years. A lot of the foundation work and other things failed. So I think part of that is an escalating issue of maintenance, although we did do the roof, I believe, a while back, and some of the other types of maintenance things. So, but that's going to be indicative of anything. Pavilion would also need staffing, I imagine, staffing for the bathrooms, getting those cleaned, going up and monitoring that from time to time. So I believe there's some staffing costs associated with each option. So thanks.
Okay, good.
I just wanted to ask real quick, I know that we're focused on this park building. Could you please kindly remind us of our current priorities? We've got the sidewalk.
Yes, so we are currently finalizing the RFP for the sidewalk to go out and work on getting that bid selected and moving forward with construction of it, hopefully in the springtime. That would be for the sidewalk connecting there in front of the park. And then we also are wrapping up and finalizing everything with our town center site plan and working through those motions so that we could move forward with the exterior work at this property.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else?
Just, I need a little bit clarification. So looking at line 31, upgrade pantry in place adaptive reuse, we're saying the estimated cost right now is about 170,000, but there was a mention of also 200K. So are we talking about the same thing? What is the 200,000 that?
Marchant, did Marchant mention the 200?
I'm sorry, what was this?
No, I think there was a mention of getting a quote for $200,000, right? Didn't we?
I want to say when Lewis did the estimate for the rehabilitation of the building, didn't he provide an estimate in that?
Yes, he did.
I think he did. I was still out on maternity leave, so I just can't quote it. But I can get it pulled up.
I do want to say at the time, the per square foot new construction was more than the estimate for rehabilitating the meeting. I can try to find those.
This
Further
is
has the
rehab in the
numbers.
pantry.
So,
What's that? The 200,000 was, I think, I remember, so we had two parts. We had the foundation that had its own assessment.
Okay.
And then we had a separate, our contractor that does work for the town went in and did a separate or a supplementary assessment of what would be needed to upgrade it to public access. And that was the number that he had put together. I can't find the memo.
so I want to correct Councilmember Bayani. The contractor at the time had given us a demo existing building and fill the whole relocate utilities about 35,000. Then for new building, pavilion, parking, ADA, bathroom access, 200,000. A total of 235,000 is what he quoted. But again, that was without engineering for any of the interior stuff. But that's basically for the demo of the building. As far as the cost to just what he can see going off the report was 122,400. But after speaking to Katie, I'm sure that's just for the building. There would be more that we need to do than just that.
This is to rehab the building is about 122,000. That's old quote.
But that was also when he thought he could use the code if we were just bringing up the building to this current standard. But once we talked to him and I informed him that thought is to use it as a community center open to the public, is when he informed me that then that code, rehab code, won't apply anymore. You would have to bring it up to current building standards. So it would increase that cost as well. So what he did here is he stated that it would be some patching.
Just the foundation work was, just the observations from the IMEG report, he listed at 45,000. And then additionally is the 122 for the other work. We'll print this and hand it out.
Yep.
Thanks. I couldn't
Print it.
find that. So, Mr. Mayor, just circling back, so no supplementary information for next week's item.
But I believe the staff is going to work on providing
Yeah.
as a cost comparison, right?
Okay.
Yes.
Cool.
That's correct. And I will also find out who the aggrieved party will be. Those are my two items I have.
Please check my work. If you
Okay.
disagree with my references, please let me know. Or please correct the record.
Do you mind submitting it electronically to Kim for ease of adding,
Sure.
documenting?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, last chance for anything before we move on? We shall move on. Adjournment.
Motion to adjourn?
Got a motion, got a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
That was quick.
Let's close it up.
Chief, are you going to approve this?